All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. The sun is out. We are in the mid-70s today in beautiful East Tennessee. By law, when the sun is out, the guns must also be out. So we're back in the tank top. Who knows how many episodes are going to be like this, but I figured, the weather is nice. I might as well take advantage of it by dressing nice and comfortably, right? We have a absolutely chock full, loaded episode of stuff to get to today. Tugging on some heartstrings. Also going to be looking at some headlines. The Combine was last week. We had some big-time performances as expected. A lot of stuff going on. Going to try, and I emphasis on try, to keep this thing to a reasonable length of time. And with that in mind, I'm going to take a gulp of this here ice cold caffeinated carbonated beverage. Yup, here comes the burp here in a second. A lot more volume to that burp than I thought there would be. Apologize to that to people who care, but not a really sincere apology. Either way, we have got some stuff to get into, so let's look at some headlines right quick. If I can pull them up on my phone here. Scroll on up to the top. First and foremost, we'll get the emotional stuff out of the way first. Yesterday, as I'm recording this, 2 days ago on Sunday, as this episode is coming out, got some sad news out of the NFL. What would I describe him as? NFL insider, a guy who was a massive part of my childhood, Chris Mortenson, passed away at the age of 72, I believe he was. It's just sad. That's one of those, usually when I see deaths come across the timeline, I'm like, okay, that sucks for the family. I don't really have a whole lot of emotional connection. This one hit me right in the chest, honestly. I was looking at the headlines while I'm at work because, sometimes these things happen. I look down, I see Mort died, and man, that one, these things never moved me to tears. It's not like they were my family or that I knew them personally, but Chris Mortenson and Adam Schefter were, my childhood. Whenever I was first getting into sports TV, I would be waiting with bated breath. This is before Twitter was really a thing as far as getting your sports news and, NFL insiders breaking news on that platform. You basically had to go to one of the sports networks, be it Fox Sports or, the worldwide leader in ESPN. I was an ESPN kid, I think starting in like 7th or 8th grade. I watched ESPN programming religiously after school. I absolutely loved it, adored it. It's part of what got me into sports, and one of the biggest parts of that experience of my childhood was Chris Mortenson, Chris Mortenson, Adam Schefter, breaking down the news of the day, giving their perspective as insiders for the sport. Chris Mortenson was a giant part of my childhood. I really, really loved Chris Mortenson, everything he did for the sport, everything that everyone that he helped get into the sport, everything that he, reported. He did it in a fun way. He had a great time, had a blast throughout the entire process of being an insider. On some classic NFL countdown skits, was on one with Snoop Dogg going into a Super Bowl, had all sorts of stuff. He's just a guy that was just full of life, had all sorts of fun. His speech abilities towards the end of his life kind of degraded a little bit. These things will happen. By God, the dude beat stage 4 throat cancer. He's an absolute warrior. But yeah, as far as this pertains to me, yeah, Chris Mortenson was, he was my childhood, man. It's one of those things, and it hit me right in the chest, like I said, because, man, this guy, for the longest time, I'd turn on my TV, and it was either him, Adam Schefter, or both of them on the screen at the same time, breaking down the news for me, the stuff I was most interested in the NFL world. And, man, it just feels like, selfishly, obviously, prayers out, if you're a religious person, prayers out to his family, his son, his wife, all the great friends that he left behind. Daniel Jeremiah, one of the guys that Chris Mortenson mentored, big time draft analyst on NFL Network, kind of took I forget the guy's name, former Raiders GM Mike Mayock. Took his spot basically whenever he moved on to the NFL and took a GM role with the Las Vegas Raiders, I guess Oakland Raiders at the time, maybe even LA when they had that little stint there for a second. But yeah, Daniel Jeremiah stepped in after that. He's one of the guys that Chris Mortenson helped bring into the insider game, bring into the NFL world, if you will. He had a really impassioned sort of, wasn't really a speech. It was just 45 seconds or so. He was breaking up the whole time. You could tell he was really, really emotional about it. Adam Schefter in particular, Chris Mortenson's longtime running mate on ESPN, put out a really great piece. It's probably on his Twitter account. I assume it's on ESPN platforms and stuff like that. I very much encourage you, especially if Mort meant as much to you as he did to me in my childhood. I very much encourage you to go and watch that video. It was a powerful message, powerful retelling of his sports life, if you will, just his life in general. I mean, I didn't even know until that Schefter piece. I mean, Mort served 2 years in Vietnam in the Army, had just such a wild, adventurous path to get where he was and help so many people along the way. It's one of those things. Yeah, it just feels like a part of my childhood died a little bit on Sunday, and that speaks to just how impactful Chris Mortenson was as a voice, as an NFL insider. I'm kind of getting emotional just talking about it, just thinking about it, because that's part of my childhood. That's just it's gone now. Sometimes you get older and these things happen. You think by 28 you feel like the childhood is totally dead, but yeah, it's one of the, you keep getting nails in the coffin as you get older. Chris Mortenson passing was definitely one of those nails in the coffin. But rest in peace, Chris Mortenson, a titan of the game, NFL Hall of Famer, a guy that will be sorely missed by many people. And did a fantastic job in his life. Staying on the emotional side, Jason Kelce made it official today as I'm recording this on Monday afternoon. He held a press conference at the Eagles facility and officially announced his retirement. And frankly, he had one of the best retirement speeches I've ever heard. I probably heard 80-90% of it or so. Just kind of went through his entire life, basically his entire football life, from little league, playing in the backyard, to his college days at University of Cincinnati, to the NFL and beyond, meeting his wife, building his family. I mean, the roller coaster of emotions. He was damn near crying at all times, and that's one of those things. It's such a great speech. Again, I'm not a particularly emotional guy, but sometimes when you see a grown man on the verge of tears, it hits you right here. I got a lump in my throat on several occasions listening to Jason Kelce talk about the odyssey that has been his full football career, from in the middle of his career wondering if he would even still be with the Philadelphia Eagles, to being a surefire Hall of Famer, one of the best centers to ever play the game. That's another one. That's a bit of a longer one than the Adam Schefter piece on Chris Mortenson, but I would encourage you all, if you are interested in it, to go look up the video of Jason Kelce's speech announcing his retirement, because it is one of the greatest retirement speeches I have ever heard. I think that the first Brett Favre retirement was along those same lines, but it was just so eloquently written. I assume Jason Kelce wrote it himself. He's a hell of a writer if that is the case. Maybe he had some help along the way. Wouldn't be shocked on that, but it was such a well-written speech. It hit you right in the feels the whole time. And the game is going to miss him. He's a fun player to watch, a great personality. He's going to thrive in his post-career. He's already kind of set himself up with the New Heights podcast. All the success that they had, him and Travis Kelce, his brother, also featured heavily in that. One of the more emotional parts of the speech was him talking about his brother getting drafted. Hey, I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it, because it's just so beautiful thinking Jason Kelce saying whenever he got drafted, his father was in tears because his son saw his dreams come true. And then 2 years later, when Travis Kelce gets drafted, he was the one in tears as well. Him and his father both in tears because his brother is now able to say that his dreams came true as well. I mean, yeah. Go look that up. Again, a longer listen. I mean, I probably listened to it for, I don't know, like 35 minutes of it while it was being simulcast on the Pat McAfee show. But yeah, that was one of the greatest retirement speeches I've ever heard. Probably the greatest retirement speech that I've ever heard. And yeah, wish Jason Kelce all the best in his post-career. The Eagles now have a huge hole to fill in the middle of that offensive line. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Howie Roseman does to mitigate that and get a new guy in there. It'll be interesting to watch. But congratulations to Jason Kelce on a awesome career in the NFL. Let's get out of the emotional stuff. Let's talk about some combine news, shall we? I just wrote down a few of the highlights. I'm sure there's more stuff that happened that people will talk about later. You know, some of the people on the NFL Live, I'm sure will do a little bit deeper dive than I did. But just from a Treetops perspective, the ones that were going viral on Twitter throughout the course of the weekend, we'll just go down the list. Not in a list order of priority, just a chronological order of, you know, things happening at the combine and, you know, going big on Twitter and whatnot. So just going down the list. First and foremost, we had NC State linebacker Peyton Wilson dropping a 4.43 in the 40 to lead all linebackers. Big, fast white boy. Need I say more? He is going to be an all-star for the all-white team if we do have the all-black versus all-white bowl at some point. Not going to happen. It only really plays out in weird fantasies that we have. But Peyton Wilson absolutely can flat out fly. We'll see where he gets drafted to here in the upcoming draft. Dallas Turner, freak, absolute physical specimen. 6'3", 247, 6'11 wingspan, fastest 40 for an edge player at 4.46, and the highest vertical among edge players at 40.5 inches. He is going to be a stud. I think his measurables, I mean, just flip on the tape and look at him at Alabama, especially when he had Will Anderson on the opposite side. Dallas Turner was an absolute monster his entire time at Alabama. There's a good chance he ends up in the top 10 somewhere. I doubt he falls much farther than that. He's going to be in the top half of the first round. Those measurables just cemented it. Absolute physical freak, Dallas Turner. He will be a much coveted prospect come draft time. Michael Penix, real winner in this one. Passed all the medical evaluations, which I kind of expected it, but I think a lot of NFL people saw that he had those 2 ACLs early on in his college career, weren't sure of how his knees have held up through all that. He passes all the medicals. Great news for him, and they answer all those questions that the executives might have had about his medical situation coming into the NFL. 6'9 wingspan for Michael Penix, long ass arms, 10.5-inch hands, which is top 10 all time for QBs. Same as Anthony Richardson, who is 4 inches taller at 6'6". And as we know, he has the best arm in the draft. And I'll walk that back again. Joe Milton has the best arm in the draft. Just as pure power, just pure ability to huck a pigskin 80 yards down the field if he needs to. He was tossing balls 70 with ease. We'll get to him in just a second. But as far as a combination of arm strength and accuracy, no one better in the entire draft than Michael Penix Jr. Not quite the mobile athlete that you see from Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. He's a little bit older, which scares some teams away. Might end up having him drop into the second round when it's all said and done. If I were the Vikings at number 12, I think we're at number 12, 11, 12, I can't remember which pick we are there. I would take Michael Penix. I've been scared off thoroughly by J.J. McCarthy. Routes on air, he was awful at the combine, throwing the ball. Missed a ton of throws. Was not very good. Shows some questionable mechanics. The trail foot kind of drifting on him, which led to some inaccurate passes at the combine. I would absolutely, and this is what I've kind of maintained since the national championship, I want Michael Penix on the Minnesota Vikings, man. I think he is a stud if you get him in the right coaching situation. He's got the arm, he's got the accuracy. I have no idea how he interviewed, what he looked like on the whiteboard. I'd imagine he did fairly well. I haven't heard a whole lot of, either way, a whole lot of news as to how he did in those one-on-one evals with teams, those one-on-one interviews. But Michael Penix, a guy to watch come the NFL draft here in a few months. Xavier Worthy exceeded my expectations. I expected him to kind of flash off the screen come combine time, as I was talking about players to watch last week. He ran a blistering 40 time. Set a new combine record at 4.21 in the 40. The track record for those types of wideouts in the NFL, not great, but I really like Worthy as a receiver. I'm very partial to guys like Derek Stingley at LSU. Stepped on campus and on a defense with Devin White, all sorts of future pros, was the undisputed best player on that side of the field. Xavier Worthy stepped on the field at Texas and was immediately the number one wide receiver. The second that he walked in the door, he has been a baller ever since he got on campus. He had dark horse Heisman hype coming into this past season. I mean, and it's not just a 4.21 that you train for. You have good running form when you're running without pads. He plays that fast. He is an absolute burner on the football field. A guy that I assume Andy Reid's looking at licking his chops, because I assume with how deep the wide receiver class is, he's probably going to fall to the back end of the first round. If he's still there at 32, the Chiefs are going to take him in a heartbeat and laugh their way all the way to the bank. I can almost guarantee you of that. Xavier Worthy did a lot to help himself. I don't think he needed to do much. I think he was already kind of a borderline first-round pick. But that 4.21 put everyone on notice. And like I said, I think he is different from a lot of guys that run that fast. Like John Ross had some potential, didn't really, have a great deal of production in college. Xavier Worthy, like I said, was the number one wide receiver the second he stepped on campus as a 17, 18-year-old when he first got to college. I really think Xavier Worthy could turn into something special at the NFL level. Kind of slight of frame, only 5'10", not too heavy. I don't think that necessarily matters, though. I think he could be a stud at the NFL level, and with that speed, could absolutely break a defense. I think as a deep threat, I think he'll flash off the screen right away in the NFL. He is certainly one to watch as we go forward. Amarius Mims, tackle out of Georgia. He is a monster of a human being. I mean, get these measurables. 6'7", that's at the combine, where they basically just put your body into a trash compactor to get you down to your quote-unquote true height. They compress your spine, essentially, in order to get you as short as possible. For instance, I believe Marvin Harrison Jr. measured in at 6'3". He's 6'4", absolutely 6'4". I mean, everyone basically loses an inch when they go into these measurements, because the combine people just squish their head down as far as it'll go and then measure your quote-unquote true height. And that, with all that, Amarius Mims still 6'7", 340 pounds, 7'2" wingspan, 11.25-inch hands. Honestly, I initially thought, hey, if he's there when the Titans pick late in the top 10, I think either 11 or 10, something in that range, I would take him in a heartbeat, because you got Bill Callahan there who can mold a special sort of talent, a special sort of measurable guy like that into something that could be an all-pro caliber player. But then I'm thinking about it. I mean, the quarterbacks are going to go early. I think 1, 2, 3 is going to be quarterbacks. That's not really news to anyone. Then from there it gets interesting. I think that's where you're going to start to see the Marvin Harrison. Maybe you see Roma Dunze. Malik Neighbors, I'm sure, will be a hot topic of discussion at the top of this draft. There's so many skill position players at the top. You might get your pick of Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu, who in a year where if there were less quarterbacks and the wide receiver class wasn't so deep, would probably be top 5 picks, and Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu still might be a top 5 pick, especially with the Cardinals sitting there. I would imagine they're probably going to take another offensive lineman. Need receivers for sure, but in a deep receiver class, I think the need on the offensive line trumps the need on the outside, so I think probably going to get either Alt or Fashanu off the board early. But if you got your pick of Fashanu or Amarius Mims, I love Amarius Mims. I mean, he's an absolute physical freak, obviously, but you can't pass up on a polished guy like Olu Fashanu, about as close to a can't-miss sort of prospect as you get. Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt, for that matter. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of those guys, especially when you got an offensive line coach like Bill Callahan in place, widely known as one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire league. I really, really like this guy, Amarius Mims, though. I think if he slips in the middle of the first round and he goes to the right situation, someone's going to get an absolute steal with their pick of Amarius Mims. He is a guy that absolutely fascinates me with that insane measurables that he put up. If his feet are any good, he's going to be a star at the next level. That's my main takeaway from that. Because you can be that big, you can be that physically imposing. If you can't move your feet, defensive ends are just going to run right around you, and you're going to be a sack machine. You're just going to be a sieve on the outside. So, assuming his feet are good, I think he's going to be a very, very good player at the next level. Joe Milton, he did exactly what I expected. He got into the throwing session. You can tell who is watching the combine or who's following the results, who literally never, ever watches college football, because they're comparing Joe Milton to Josh Allen. Sorry for the pause on audio there. I was just, creasing my eyes. People are stupid, man. People are just stupid. Like, tell me you didn't watch any college football without telling me you didn't watch any college football, because Joe Milton and Josh Allen, outside of their arms, have literally nothing in common as quarterbacks. I mean, both have very electric arms. I mean, Joe Milton was grooving 70-yard passes down the field in the throwing session. Absolutely knocked that out of the park as far as that's concerned. And I'm telling you, someone's going to fall in love with him. I don't know if someone reaches up and takes him in the first round. I don't see him falling past the second or third round, frankly. I think someone is going to reach up, and they're going to be enamored with those physical tools, with the arm strength. I mean, the insane arm strength. He might have, walking into the NFL, one of the best arm, maybe a top 5 strongest arm in the NFL, just walking in the door. That's how electric his arm strength is. I did also watch him in college, though. I saw him absolutely sail intermediate throws on a consistent basis, inconsistent with accuracy in the short throws. Really good deep ball, but everything in the underneath was kind of a hit and miss proposition. There's a reason why they weren't necessarily broken up about him sitting out the bowl game, especially when they got Nico Iamaleava sitting right behind him, and you saw what Nico did in the bowl game, 5 touchdowns. Looking forward to him this season at Tennessee. But yeah, someone, I don't know who it is, someone is going to trick themselves into drafting Joe Milton too high and expecting too much of him, especially if he goes into a situation where the coaching isn't the best. Probably needs some mechanical work. I don't know what the deal is with those throws on the underneath. If he can improve that accuracy, he could be an absolute star. I've just not seen a whole lot of evidence that he can in fact improve that accuracy. But we'll find out. Like I said, someone is going to enamor themselves into picking him higher than they probably should, and I'm interested to see who it is. Hey, maybe it's the Vikings. Who knows? We'll see. One more thing on the combine here. I just lost my place on the page here. 5 offensive linemen ran under 5 seconds in the 40. Also, I saw a tweet here. I'm just going to choose to believe it because sounds good. I'm going to believe it. One of those things. Here it is. Josh Norris on Twitter. This is from 2023, so a full year ago. Since 2010, just 28 offensive linemen recorded 4.47 short shuttle or better at the NFL Combine. 24 were drafted. Those 24 went on to start 84% of their NFL of their NFL games. So, with that in mind, let's look at some of the linemen that fit that criteria. First and foremost, we had, like I said, 5 linemen run under 5 seconds. That would be Brandon Coleman out of TCU, guard. Offensive tackle Tylen Grabble out of UCF. Frank Crum, offensive tackle out of Wyoming, who looked the most majestic running the 40. That's a damn fact. Absolutely punishing the ground with his feet. The running form was not the prettiest in the world, but he's an offensive lineman. 40 yards is probably the farthest he'll run in his entire football life, in all likelihood. Tanner Bortolini, center out of Wisconsin. That's 4.94 in the 40. And Roger Rosengarten, offensive tackle out of Washington, led the way with a 4.92. Of those guys, in the 20-yard short shuttle, Tanner Bortolini, and we're just going to go down the list because there were 6 offensive linemen that ended up having a short shuttle of 4.47 or better, and they are as followed. From top to bottom here, Tanner Bortolini, center out of Wisconsin, 4.28 in the short shuttle. Dylan McMahon, 4.33. Dominic Pooney, guard out of Kansas, 4.40. Mason McCormick, guard out of South Dakota State, 4.45. Jarrett Kingston, guard out of USC, 4.47. And Brady Latham, guard out of Arkansas, 4.47 as well. Only one player had the crossover of an under 5 second 40 and under 4.47 in the short shuttle. That was center out of Wisconsin, Tanner Bortolini. Let's look at his measurables real quick, because I do believe he's over 300 pounds as well. He's one of, yes, he is just a shade over 300 pounds. Stop talking to me, computer. What's going on? What's going on? I don't need to see the video of Tanner Bortolini running the 40. I already have his time right here. But yes, 6'4", 303, 10-inch hands, 31.5-inch long arms. I really like him. I think he might have vaulted himself into the first round. I haven't watched his college tape at all, but being able to run under 5 seconds in the 40 and hitting that magical 4.47 mark and beating it by a full 0.2 of a second in the short shuttle. I know a team in Philadelphia that just had their center retire. Tanner Bortolini might be the guy that ends up replacing him. Seems like a really special sort of athlete on the offensive line. I would be interested to see, I'm going to be interested to see where he goes, because just from a measurables perspective and what I just laid out there, 84% of the guys drafted with the 4.47 in the short shuttle, or ended up starting, I don't know, a bunch of the games. Or I guess it was 24 of those guys drafted. They started 84% of the games that they played. Yeah, I'm stupid. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm very interested to see Tanner Bortolini. Remember the name. I think he might end up being a really solid player in this draft coming up. So there you have it. There is my there's my little combine recap for you. I'll get back to you. I usually have my favorite physical freak coming out of the combine. I'll get back to y'all on that. It's been a hectic week as far as getting back. Getting to a point where I can actually look at some of this stuff and not worry about other aspects of my life. It's been a very busy time. We'll just leave it there. But yeah, remember the name Tanner Bortolini. And with that, we'll keep it moving here on the list of headlines. Getting out of the combine mode here, let's look at what do we have next on the list. Yeah, we got some roster moves coming up here. The Bucs are releasing defensive end Shaq Barrett with a post-June 1 designation. I think a lot of people saw this coming. He's kind of lost a step over the last couple years. I think he suffered a couple major injuries in that time as well. Had a high price tag. This was kind of to be expected that Shaq Barrett was going to be on the move. As another solid defender historically, it's going to be on the market. Not sure how much juice he has left in the tank, but he'll end up somewhere. At some point, he's going to end up on someone's roster, probably contributing in a big way. Hold up. Quick sip out of the carbonated, caffeinated beverage to my left. Wide receiver, Mike Evans. set to truly test free agency, according to his representation. He said he wants to play with an elite QB, be paid like an elite wide receiver, and compete for a Super Bowl. So just based on cap space and QB team situation, I've got a few candidates. The Bucs. That's it, because they locked him in for 2 years, $52 million, $35 million guaranteed on Monday afternoon before reaching free agency. Strong media subterfuge by his agent. He got me. I thought for sure that Mike Evans was going to be able to, at the very least, test free agency. Thought maybe they get something done, but if not, he'll be on his way. Elite subterfuge from the agent there. I assume his representation and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had some long, fruitful conversations at the NFL Combine that precipitated this $52 million deal with $35 million guaranteed. Sorry, had to get that burp out of there. Might be even more left in the tank. Nah, I suppressed it. We're good. But yeah, Mike Evans going to be staying with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next order of business, locking in Baker Mayfield on a new contract. That would be a real slap in the face to Mike Evans if they are not able to retain Baker Mayfield when this is all said and done. He's stuck with, I don't know, are they still going to pretend like they're going to trot out Kyle Trask? Maybe they go draft a rookie QB. Either way, not what Mike Evans was looking for when I laid out his list of demands in free agency, so to speak. Yeah, good guy to have back in town for Tampa Bay coming off of a playoff year. Interested to see what they do in the draft overall. There are some areas of need that they need to improve in, particularly pass rush. Offensive line is getting old. Ryan Jensen just retired. Tristan Wirfs is a good piece, but you need to build around him a little bit more. Wide receiver core is aging as well. So there's some areas of improvement that they can attack there, and they're in a fairly weak division. So could still be going to the playoffs next year if they retain Baker Mayfield, the guys they need to retain. Antoine Winfield, I believe, went past the deadline for franchise tag, so he will not be franchise tagged. Interested to see if they get a deal done with him or if he's allowed to hit free agency. A lot of moving parts for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they locked in a big one here with Mike Evans on a big deal. The Ravens intend to use their franchise tag on star defensive tackle Justin Madubuike if they can't reach an agreement on a contract extension before the deadline, which would be the day that this gets released. And as of right now, no, not a peep out of the Ravens, not a contract to speak of. So it looks like Justin Madubuike is barreling towards the franchise tag with the Baltimore Ravens. Head coach of the Broncos, Sean Payton, says a decision on Russell Wilson's future will come within the next week. And, on Monday afternoon, that decision came. He will be released at the start of the new league year, March 13th, incurring the largest dead cap hit in league history. There's been a little bit of confusion among the people reporting on this. Some people have said that they're just going to cut him straight ahead at the beginning of the league year. Some people have deduced that they're going to make it a post-June 1 designation. If it's a post-June 1, they'll incur like $35 million dead cap this year, and then it'll be the record cap hit at $49 million the following year. If they just bite the bullet, do it all this year, which is what I would do. I don't think the Broncos are in a position to compete for a Super Bowl just yet. It would be a whopping $85 million cap hit, which is, I believe, like twice the number of the next closest dead cap hit in league history of Matt Ryan. Just an all-time terrible contract by the Denver Broncos. And the GM that brought him there and made that terrible trade is still the GM at former Rick Spielman guy, former Vikings assistant general manager. Hope for the best of his success, but this is a put up or shut up year as GM of the Denver Broncos. If you are George Payton, it's insane that they signed him to that contract in retrospect. But now Russell Wilson is on the market. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole based on what we saw in Denver. Obviously the accuracy kind of dropped off the face of the earth at times, especially under Nathaniel Hackett. You were wondering what the hell was going on there for a lot of that time. He had good numbers this year with Sean Payton calling the plays. Still didn't look like old Russell Wilson. I believe old Russell Wilson is never coming back, quite frankly, so we can put that to bed. I, again, probably would not touch Russell Wilson, quite frankly, but hey, if Kirk Cousins leaves, which there's rumblings that the Atlanta Falcons are very interested in Kirk Cousins, probably willing to pay more than the Vikings. There is a number, no one knows the number for certain, but there is a number that the Vikings are just simply not willing to exceed to come in and pay him. So if the Falcons come in, knock his socks off with a $40 million a year deal, I think Kirk Cousins is out the door, and at that point, you start entertaining guys like Russell Wilson. Frankly, personally, I would rather have a guy like Jacoby Brissett in there. I think he's a much more well-equipped guy to be a starter. Right now in the NFL at quarterback, I think he's been slept on a lot because he sat behind Sam Howell last year, but he played really good football with the Cleveland Browns the year before. You pay him $10 million, which is probably even be an overpay for Jacoby Brissett to bring him in. You get a quality starter, a really good bridge QB, assuming that we draft someone either in the first or second round to be the QB of the future for the Vikings. Again, if Kirk Cousins isn't there, that's kind of the way that I would see this thing going as of right now. But we shall see. Russell Wilson now on the market, so he will be in consideration for a lot of these QB needy teams, Atlanta being one of them if they don't land Kirk Cousins, I would imagine. All right, so next up on the list of things to get to, Raiders GM Tom Telesco said he doesn't plan on trading wide receiver Davante Adams. This is a little bit of a different situation than the Justin Jefferson one, though. In my mind, just based on where the Raiders roster is at, they're not in a position to win, not really in a position to make the playoffs. They are way at the bottom of that division. I think of the teams that are there right now, maybe in the least favorable position to win right now. I think it's a really good division in the AFC West. I think it's going to be coming in. I think the Chargers are going to be better under Jim Harbaugh. I think the Broncos, who knows what they do at quarterback, but if they, get a semblance of solid QB play, I think they'll be solid in the division. Sean Payton, really good head coach. In year 2, I expect an improvement there as far as discipline. All of that is concerned. Obviously, the reigning back-to-back Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, are in your division. It's just a tough way to win. So I personally not going to rule out a possible trade closer to the draft if they do decide to deal Davante Adams. They have a lot of needs on the roster, and they need draft capital in order to fill those needs. So, yes, Tom Telesco says Davante Adams is a Raider. Sometimes GMs lie, man. And it wouldn't even necessarily be a lie. He could just say, oh, he was a Raider when I said that, and then we got an offer we couldn't refuse, so he's no longer a Raider. I could very easily see that happening, but just keep an eye on that one. Off the top of my head, I don't think Davante Adams is going anywhere. I would not be shocked at all if he did end up getting dealt somewhere for a massive haul of picks, though. See, he is still a top 5 wide receiver in the entire league, languishing with terrible quarterback play in Las Vegas right now. So, one to keep an eye on for sure. Falcons are releasing tight end Jonnu Smith. Really solid blocker on the market. Not sure where he's at as a pass catcher right now. Kind of exceeded my expectations with the Atlanta Falcons last year. Maybe another reuniting with Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh now, the offensive coordinator there with the Steelers. They drafted Darnell Washington last year. They have Pat Freiermuth. But hey, maybe they need a third tight end that they can kind of ask to do a lot of the dirty work, a lot of the blocking. I think, Darnell Washington kind of fills that role very well. I mean, that was his biggest attribute in my mind coming out of college, out of Georgia, is just how good of a blocker he was. But yeah, one to keep an eye on. I think there might be a reunion in the works there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wouldn't be shocked at all. He's kind of had his best years of his entire career with Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans, then the head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see if he follows him again to Pittsburgh. That's one to keep an eye on. The Chiefs informed All-Pro cornerback L'Jarius Sneed that they are prepared to use the franchise tag on him if they can't come to terms on a new deal, and they did just that on Monday afternoon. They franchise tagged him. He'll be making just a shade under $20 million on the non-exclusive franchise tender. They are also willing to facilitate a trade if Snead's camp finds a mutually beneficial destination. Bottom line is, all options are on the table, but the Chiefs are making it clear they are not going to let L'Jarius Sneed walk out the door after the season he just had without getting compensation in return. And I would assume it would be a hefty package for a guy that is as impactful as L'Jarius Sneed is. Pro Bowl guy, I believe he was an All-Pro this last year. One of the linchpins of that vaunted Kansas City defense that honestly, I mean, carried them throughout the season, carried them to the playoffs if nothing else, and then really shut down some elite offensive competition en route to the Super Bowl. I mean, you go back and look at the path that the Kansas City Chiefs had to go through and what that Kansas City Chiefs defense did to those offenses. I mean, going from Miami absolutely shutting them down at home, unique situation being in that minus 27 degree wind chill day in Kansas City. But still, credit where it's due, absolutely shut down the Miami Dolphins. Held the Buffalo Bills down. I mean, went to the next round, the AFC Championship. I mean, just utterly dominated the second half against the Baltimore Ravens, who are one of the greatest regular season offensive teams in NFL history, if you just go by the numbers. I mean, Lamar Jackson MVP, and the Kansas City Chiefs defense just stoned them. He was, L'Jarius Sneed, a linchpin of those efforts. So I think the Chiefs would be inclined to keep him if they can. But at the same time, they also have to re-sign Chris Jones, who we're about to talk about here in just a second. So if you got to let him walk, might as well get something for him on the way out the door. L'Jarius Sneed has been franchise tagged, though. So he'll either be a Kansas City Chief or he's being traded. But the Chiefs control L'Jarius Sneed's destiny when it's all said and done. And as expected, defensive tackle Chris Jones was not franchise tagged, so he has a clear path to free agency if he so chooses. The sides are actively negotiating, however, before the quote-unquote legal tampering period starts up, and I believe, I think it's next Tuesday, next Wednesday, something like that. Want to get this thing done before it gets to that point, just so he doesn't go out in the market, because he's going to get buku bucks if he goes out into free agency, and I doubt the Chiefs want to pay that sort of package for him. Got a whole week to get it done, though. I think the sides are probably working feverishly on that. It seems to be what the reports are saying from every insider with knowledge on the situation, that the sides are actively trying to come to an agreement for him to stay with Kansas City. I think it would be a travesty if they let him walk. You want to talk about a linchpin of the defense. L'Jarius Sneed was the linchpin of the secondary. Chris Jones is the straw that stirs the drink on that Chiefs defense. The Chiefs are not as dominant on defense this year as they were without Chris Jones anchoring the middle, moving to the outside on pass rushing downs, just dominating the line of scrimmage no matter where he lined up. I don't know if the Chiefs win a Super Bowl if they don't have Chris Jones, quite frankly. So that's a guy you absolutely need to sign. I'll say it again. Pay that man his money. The Vikings hired Josh McCown as their new quarterback coach. Didn't quite work out with Bryce Young. Wanted C.J. Stroud. Quite frankly, I think that's probably the worst kept secret in all the league. At C.J. Stroud's pro day said, we'll have to find you some basketball courts when you're in Carolina. That's how effusive he was that C.J. Stroud should have been the number 1 overall pick last year. Maybe you should have listened to Josh McCown, but that's not David Tepper's style now, is it? And that the GM that made that pick is no longer there. Poor Bryce Young, man. But Josh McCown, now the quarterback's coach for the Minnesota Vikings. If nothing else, the average level of attractiveness on the coaching staff just went up, man. I mean, you got Kevin O'Connell, really good face, unfortunate hairline. Seems like it might be close for him might be time for him to come home soon to the Bald Brigade. Unfortunately, just a strikingly beautiful man, though, in the facial region. Now we got Josh McCown on the staff. Brian Flores, a pretty attractive man himself. We're not going to rest until we have the sexiest staff in all of football. I don't know if it wins games, but I'm certainly willing to find out. So welcome aboard, Josh McCown. He will probably be molding a young QB in this upcoming 2024 season. The Patriots have given Director of Scouting Elliott Wolf full personnel control, making him the de facto GM. Kind of expected, but it's now official. He's not. The Patriots are kind of a weird organization. They don't really name a GM. Kind of a holdover from the Bill Belichick era, where Bill Belichick was the GM. He made all the personnel decisions. Elliott Wolf's been in the front office there for a while, so knows the organization, obviously knows the needs, and they go into this offseason with a massive amount of cap room. We'll get to that here in just a bit, but this is a big offseason for the Patriots. They're really far away from competing, but they can set themselves up nicely if they spend wisely in this upcoming free agency period. Elliott Wolf is going to be the one piling the ship, though, so we'll see how he does. See if he can have a little bit better offensive track record of bringing in players than Bill Belichick did in his time as the Patriots head coach. The Jets are giving permission to Zach Wilson's camp to seek a trade. Somehow, I doubt they'll get a whole lot of traction on that. Also, General Manager Joe Douglas told reporters at the Combine that they will not use the franchise tag on pass rusher Bryce Huff coming off a 10-sack season. The two sides will negotiate up until the deadline, but if they don't agree on a price, he will be a free agent, and I think he will be a hot commodity coming off that breakout season. He's a young player, explosive guy off the edge, really, really fast, developed a lot of good pass rush moves. Benefited from having an elite secondary on the back end there, which helped him get to the quarterback a little bit more, I'd imagine. Gave him more time to get to the quarterback, that is. But it would appear that a very good pass rusher, an up-and-coming star, is going to be set to hit the market. And I think he's going to have a lot of suitors. The Vikings among them, I would say. We need pass rushers more than people know, I think. I mean, first off, signed Daniil Hunter. That no real update on that situation. We're still waiting on a deal to materialize there. But yeah, need pass rushers. So could be a possible target for my team selfishly, but we'll see on how it goes there. The Colts GM, Chris Ballard, stated at the Combine that Michael Pittman Jr. will remain with the team going forward. Reading between the lines, either he'll have a contract extension or he'll be franchise tagged. Interestingly enough, was not franchise tag today. I want to say the deadline is tomorrow for franchise tag, right? I think it's the 5th, maybe 4 p.m. Maybe it was the 4th at 4 p.m. I might just be stupid. That's a high degree of possibility as well. But as of right now, they're going to be continuing to work, trying to get a deal done before Michael Pittman hits free agency. He will have no shortage of suitors if he does hit free agency. That's going to be another situation to watch. Might be another wide receiver that is hot on the streets in the free agent market coming up here in a week or so when free agency unofficially opens with the tampering period. Most deals are agreed to in that period, and I put scare quotes on that because, I mean, this past weekend in particular, we just had the event where most of these contracts were negotiated and hammered out. Not legally, mind you, but let's not kid ourselves. All those deals that drop on midnight of the 13th, some of the fastest negotiators of all time, those agents, as they drop those deals out there. Wow, we just negotiated a 3-year, $30 million contract in a span of about 5 minutes. It's crazy how that works, doesn't it? No, a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. A lot of, liaisons at St. Elmo's Steakhouse between representation and proxies for management and stuff like that. This is just how the game works, folks. I'm not breaking any news here. This is just how it all happens. I imagine that Michael Pittman had a few suitors at the NFL Combine, especially since they're coming to his place of work in Indianapolis. So interested to see if Chris Ballard can get the deal done at the deadline there. They need him, absolutely need him on that team. He is one of those wide receiver prospects. Haven't had a great deal of luck with the wide receiver prospects under Chris Ballard. Michael Pittman Jr. is one of those they hit on. Caleb Downs is one they just drafted last year. they hit on as well, but they need Michael Pittman in there. He is their undisputed number one receiver, and especially when you're coming into year two with Anthony Richardson, having a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. that can just go up and get a ball would really, really help his development. So, got to get that deal done. I think you have to pay. You have to pay Michael Pittman Jr. if you're Chris Ballard there with the Indianapolis Colts. The Chiefs are releasing Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and so begins the remaking of the receiving core. I don't think they're done. I think a lot of the guys, I think Kadarius Toney might, I don't know if his contract is up or if he's going to be released. I don't think he's going to be with the team next year. If Sky Moore is with the team, he's pretty much just going to be relegated to return duty, I would imagine. This is the first of many moves, I would imagine. I think it's going to be a combination of free agency and the draft, but expecting a completely new Chiefs wide receiver core coming into this next season. Maybe even drafting a tight end. It's not like Travis Kelce's a spring chicken out there. You saw him losing a step over the course of the last couple seasons. He's 34 years old. Probably starting to think a little bit about life after football. Might be time to look into a succession plan there as well, but I fully expect a completely remade receiving core for the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming season. Just a matter of how they intend to do that when it comes to remaking it. The Vikings are releasing running back Alexander Mattison. Not a surprise, really. Ty Chandler took his starting job down the stretch of last year. That was when the writing was on the wall. I personally expect the Vikings to draft a back in the mid-rounds this season. With the devaluation of the position, there's always really good guys there in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round range. Maybe you look at a guy like Blake Corum. Personally, I think Bucky Irving would be a damn good fit for Kevin O'Connell's offense. Just what he was able to do in college, catching the ball out of the backfield, running well when he was asked to do so. Didn't face the toughest or the stiffest defensive competition, but a really explosive back, a guy that I think would really thrive in Kevin O'Connell's system, be a good 1-2 punch there with Ty Chandler returning for his 3rd, 4th year. Can't remember exactly what year that Ty Chandler is in, but yeah, I would expect the Vikings to make a move in the draft to bring in another running back there for the situation. The Eagles are releasing Kevin Byard, who they traded for in the middle of last season. That will clear $13 million in cap space for this upcoming year. Still, lingering question from last offseason when they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. It's the same question they've got coming into this offseason. What are you going to do at safety? Reed Blankenship stepped up admirably. Kevin Byard came in. Wasn't quite what they were hoping for. They need someone to fill in the hole on the back end there. We'll see if they decide to do that in free agency or if they go the draft route or maybe a combination of the two. It feels like Howie Roseman's going to have to do something with that situation, though, going forward, because the secondary right now, it's just not tenable. It's just not winnable right now if you can't trust the guys on the back end. Again, credit to Reed Blankenship. He played very well last year. Stepped up his game big time with the opportunity he was given. I think he's earned his spot there, but you need someone else on the back end to kind of shore things up if you want to be a successful defense and also improve that pass rush again, man. They were chomping at the bit the previous season and then kind of dropped off in the sack numbers. Vic Fangio coming in there, I think will help on all fronts, though. So looking forward to seeing what Howie Roseman does to rectify that situation. Commies made a couple moves roster-wise. They released tight end Logan Thomas, tackle Charles Leno, center Nick Gates. Those were the three that they released. They cleared up some good cap space there, and that gave them $91 million in cap space, which was the most in the NFL for all of 5 minutes. But yeah, $91 million in cap space. New regime in there. Adam Peters, the GM, kind of got an opportunity to mold the roster and remake it in his image. Dan Quinn got an opportunity to instill a culture there. I think he's a really good culture builder. Really excited to see what he is and how he learned from his experience in Atlanta. I'm hopeful. I think he could be a solid head coach there for him going forward. As far as a culture is concerned, though, I think he's going to build a fantastic culture. I think he's a really good culture guy. I think he's a very positive guy, a very intense guy, though, which is going to help him in all situations pretty much on the football field. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do there, but they got a lot of cap space to do it. We'll see if they're big spenders in free agency. Might be a year before they really go on their big spending spree, quite frankly. Even if they add a million guys in free agency, I don't think this is a roster that you're expecting to just, wake up at the beginning of the 2024 season and they're going to be a playoff team. I think at the very best this year, if they do everything right and they make some solid moves in the draft and free agency, maybe you see 7-10. But the offensive line is in shambles. The defense needs to be completely stripped for parts outside of the interior defensive line with Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Already traded Montez Sweat. Got Chase Young out of town last season. The secondary, they drafted not Cameron Dantzler. Oh God, who's the one that they brought in from Mississippi State? I can't believe. Emmanuel Forbes, they drafted last year in the first round. He didn't have a fantastic season. A little bit up and down. Certainly started really, really bad, and I think that's what a lot of people have sticking in their minds. But receiving core, Jahan Dotson's a solid guy, solid prospect. Terry McLaurin is good. But what are you going to do outside of that? There's just a lot of holes in this roster that need to be filled that I just don't think you can do and compete for a playoff spot in one offseason, quite frankly. So, and not to mention the quarterback situation. Are they going to roll with Sam Howell for another year? Are they going to draft Drake May at number 2? Are they going to try and trade up to get Caleb Williams at number 1? Obviously, the USC connection there with Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator for the Commanders. A lot of questions over there in Washington, but I think they have a good slate to build on. It's just a matter of whether they decide to, use this as a developmental year or if they decide to be big spenders in free agency. We'll see here in the next week or so. I said that they had the most cap space in the NFL for all of 5 minutes. That's because the Patriots released cornerback J.C. Jackson, who they traded for. It was for a bag of balls, but they did trade for him last year. That cleared up $14 million in cap space and gave the New England Patriots a whopping league-high $100 million in cap space for this upcoming offseason. Similar situation to the Commies, though. I'm not sure how big of spenders that they will be this upcoming offseason. I think they'll be strategic with what free agents they add, specifically in positions of need, like probably going to be looking into wide receiver. Defensively, honestly, that was really the only reason why the Patriots won any games last year is defensively. So, you look at the offensive line, that needs to be remade. Cole Strange is a solid piece in there. He played well throughout the last couple years there in New England. Outside of that, though, you pretty much just got to strip the offensive line for parts. Receiving core, one of the worst receiving cores in the entire league. So a lot of stuff you have to do. But you got that defense in place. You got a lot of really good players on defense. Say what you will about Bill Belichick, the GM on the offensive side, and he deserves all the criticism he got because he put together one of the worst offensive rosters in all of football last season. But defensively, the dude could evaluate talent. Make no mistake about it. And he put together one hell of a unit the last couple years on the defensive side of the ball, and that unit is still intact. Not a whole lot of names that you've heard of, not flashy names like, Christian Barmore is there, Matthew Judon is there, Kyle Duggar, guys that don't get a whole lot of acclaim. They drafted Christian Gonzalez and was playing out of his mind before he had that shoulder injury that ended his season. But you got a lot of pieces in place on defense. You got Gerard Mayo, who, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if him or Steve Belichick was calling plays last year on defense, but an integral part of that defensive staff over the course of the last several seasons in New England. If you can get the offensive personnel right, and this is why I think they might be big spenders in free agency, actually, come to think of it, if you get the offensive personnel right, if you get the offensive line right in particular, the Patriots aren't that far off from going 8-9, 9-8, kind of jockeying for the back half of the playoff sort of situation there. It's an interesting situation with the Patriots. I think they have a lot of room to improve and some very pointed ways in which they could do that, to where if they play their cards right, they knock it out of the park in the draft, if they hit on their free agent pickups, they could turn around quicker than people think. I honestly, yeah, you got one side of the ball figured out. If you just figure out the other one, this could be a real good comeback situation, a real good first year for Gerard Mayo. We'll see what they decide to do in free agency, though. Nothing is guaranteed, obviously. The 49ers are promoting defensive pass game coordinator Nick Sorensen to defensive coordinator. They're also hiring former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley as assistant head coach as they continue the tradition of being the former Chargers head coach rehabilitation clinic. They had Anthony Lynn last year, who is now the assistant head coach with the Washington Commanders. Now Brandon Staley is there as the new assistant head coach. We'll see how it works out for him. Good thing is he has nothing to do with the defense. So, nothing to do with calling the defense. Nick Sorensen will be handling those duties, but we'll probably have, a pretty big role in the defensive game plan, I would imagine, which is fine. I just don't want him doing a whole lot when it comes to game day, because I watched the Chargers over the last couple of years. The defensive genius didn't look like much of that at all. He looked a little bit, as some are calling him, an Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey merchant, coming in from the Los Angeles Rams, coming off that Super Bowl, stepping into the Los Angeles Chargers there. But yeah, wish nothing but the best for him. I have no ill will towards the guy, so yeah, hope for the best for old big head Brandon Staley. The Dolphins are expected to let Christian Wilkins walk in free agency. Pro Bowl defensive tackle, one of the best defensive players on the market. I know a guy who used to be a head coach of the Miami Dolphins, who now just so happens, by a little bit of happenstance there, to be a defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, a team that famously needs every defensive lineman you can give them. Something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure how much cap space we're going to have left whenever we inevitably sign Justin Jefferson, and hopefully, knock on wood, we sign Danielle Hunter as well. But just something to keep an eye on there. Would be a move that makes a lot of sense if he were to end up being a Minnesota Viking. And my bias is coming through more and more day after day. Christian Wilkins will be a really good defensive player for whoever he signs with. I mean, he's one of the best run stoppers in the entire league. Doesn't get a whole lot of pub for it, but one of the more impactful defensive players in the entire league. Any team that's needy on the interior of the offensive line should be gunning hard to get Christian Wilkins on their team. I am fascinated to see where he goes, because he could be one of those pieces that elevates a defense from middle of the pack to top 10 or better. So looking forward to seeing where he ends up when it's all said and done. And we're winding down here. We're going to women's college basketball. Caitlyn Clark is declaring for the WNBA draft. Easy for me to say. Also, she broke Pistol Pete's all-time scoring record in the NCAA, men or women. Will she be the same draw in the WNBA that she has been in college? It's an interesting question. And I think the obvious answer is, no, it won't be the same being in the WNBA that it is in college basketball. Honestly, there's a bit of a larger spotlight on the women's college basketball than the WNBA. There's that. Also, probably going to be going to the Indiana Fever as the number 1 overall pick, and the Indiana Fever are in that position for a reason, so probably going to a bad team. Might be a player that ends up turning around the fortunes of the team overnight. We'll have to see how it works out there. But just the meteoric level that she is at in college basketball, it's almost impossible for her to be the exact same draw in the WNBA that she is at the college level. That being said, I think she's still going to be a massive draw when it's all said and done. Just because there's a bit of a drop-off from what she was in college doesn't mean that she won't be possibly setting attendance records for the Indiana Fever. I feel like whoever she goes to, assuming it's the Indiana Fever at the number 1 overall pick there, I think that when she gets there, she's going to have a crowd of people that are just curious to see her, just want to come in and see what all the fuss is about this Caitlyn Clark. They've seen her highlights in college. I assume a lot of families with young girls that want a role model to look up to will be buying their tickets to Indiana Fever games. I doubt the tickets are super expensive. You can get real close to the court for not a whole lot of money. So I assume that there's going to be a good uptick in fan attendance there for the Indiana Fever. I think she will be a solid draw basically wherever she goes, just because people are curious, what does she look like at the WNBA level? She's one of the biggest stars in women's college basketball history. Just because there is a little bit of a drop-off does not mean she won't be a massive star at the next level. I hope she works out. I think it would be great for the women's game if she could work out and be a legitimate bona fide star at the WNBA level. We just haven't had a whole lot of those types of mainstream, recognizable name brand stars at that level. We had a lot of really good players, great players at the WNBA level. I mean, I'm thinking about Sabrina Ionescu, Kelsey Plum, who she just passed earlier this season in scoring. Going back even farther, Diana Taurasi, Elena Delle Donne, Maya Moore, who really cool moment that I saw a video on Twitter the other day of Caitlyn Clark meeting Maya Moore. And I mean, she screamed. She literally screamed. I mean, like she was meeting the biggest, like she was meeting like a Leonardo DiCaprio or someone like that. It just goes to show. I mean, if you don't remember Maya Moore, I highly encourage you go back and look up some of the highlights of when she was at UConn. People forget how much of an absolute assassin Maya Moore was in college basketball. I think 3 or 4 time national champion at UConn, part of that great Gino Auriemma run in the 2000s there. Yeah, she was a killer. Yeah, I think, and it's evidenced by the way that Caitlyn Clark, the biggest star in women's college basketball and probably women's basketball in general, reacted to meeting Maya Moore. That's the type of reverence that she has in those circles. I mean, yeah, Maya Moore needs to have more respect put on her name. She had her WNBA career kind of cut short because, she fell in love with an innocent man that was in prison and decided to wholeheartedly assist in the legal process to get him out of prison. Got him out of prison, then ended up marrying him. A beautiful love story that I'm sure someone's going to make a movie about at some point, and it's going to be a beautiful story. That ultimately cut her WNBA career short, though, and people don't remember her as much for being the absolute assassin that she was on the basketball court while she was there. So yeah, I think it's a good reminder the way that Caitlyn Clark reacted, just how much of a baller Maya Moore was in her time as a basketball player. With that though, I forgot to pull up the Word document here. Just a minute. There we go. Pull it up. Last week the NFLPA report cards came out. My favorite thing that the NFLPA has done, quite frankly. I think this is one of the best things. I mean, publicizing these, because they've done it for a while. They just didn't publicize them for a while. Publicizing these is the best thing that the NFLPA has ever done. It puts pressure on the bad teams to improve. Public embarrassment is a strong motivator for improvement, especially when you are one of these billionaires owning the teams. You don't worry about a whole lot in life. You can take a lot of criticism when it comes to the performance of your team on the field. You can always say, hey, we're trying to improve every single day. When players are talking about terrible facilities, everything that, just a bad run organization, they hate their head coach, they hate their strength coach, it puts pressure on organizations that was not there before to change in a positive fashion. And you've seen teams respond to these report cards by making changes over the course of the last couple years. So this is one of my favorite things that the NFLPA does. With that, though, let's crack this thing open and talk about the NFLPA report cards from the last year. Just some of the highlights I highlighted, as you do with highlights from the report cards. Let me get a quick sip of this real quick, and then we'll go through it here. Talking is hard today, man. I'll tell you what. That's good good stuff. That's good stuff. Let me just wait for the burp. Yep. There it is. All right. So starting from the top here, Arthur Smith hired one dog shit strength and conditioning coach, man. 24% of players felt that they were getting the best individualized plan. The next worst approval rating of a strength coach was 65% by the Arizona Cardinals strength and conditioning coach. The Falcons were the only team in the league where players said they felt strength coaches detracted from their success. Unsurprisingly, that coach, Thomas Stallworth, no longer with the team under the new regime with Raheem Morris. 10 of the 32 teams received a D+ or worse in locker room. Only one team, though, had the dubious distinction of receiving an F- in the category. That is the Washington Commanders. Players overwhelmingly said the locker room was too small, in need of renovation, and reported a lack of cleanliness as well as multiple, let me stress, multiple sewage leaks throughout the season. That is poop on the floors coming from the poop pipes that is in the locker room. Thank you, Dan Snyder. They were also the only team to receive an F in training room, with an F- at that. We're one of two teams to receive an F in training staff, that being Chiefs with the other one. We'll talk about them in just a bit here. One of the three teams to receive an F in team travel, Titans and Buccaneers being the other two. And one of four teams to receive an F- in treatment of families, those other three being the Bengals, the New England Patriots, surprisingly, and the Steelers, surprisingly enough. That's absolutely wild that those two storied franchises don't treat their players' families better. I honestly, with Bob Kraft and the Rooney family, those are just, I assume, class organizations that do everything they can for their players' families. That one's kind of surprising to me, more so than the Washington Commanders, but back to the Commanders of it all. However, these and the other host of issues with staffing and facility issues were seen as echoes from the Dan Snyder regime. Quote, from the report card, the players understand that the new club ownership didn't create these current problems, and they are hopeful that the new ownership is willing to do what it takes to fix them. So there you have it. Hoping for improvement over the course of the next couple years. But for right now, the starting point is bad, poo-poo dog shit over there with the Washington Commies. So only up is where you can go from here. The Dolphins and Vikings ranked 1 and 2 respectively in overall composite rating in this NFLPA poll. Ziggy Wilf and Stephen Ross were the only two owners to receive an A+ rating from players as well. And it's not really shocking for the Vikings. They've been here the last couple years, upstanding organization. It's not just because I'm a fan of the team. It shows in the report card. They get A's or A- in pretty much everything. I think the lowest grade they got was a B+. Like, they're just a high-class organization that consistently has top-of-the-line care for players, families, everything to that degree. Props to Stephen Ross, though, man. That's the one that really surprised me. I'm not sure he's a great owner, per se, overall, but he's certainly stepped up his game since the firestorm after Brian Flores got fired. He had a lot of ill will built up towards him with the way that whole thing ended. With him, kind of doing Brian Flores dirty, pushing him out of town, trying to pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars to lose games and tank for Tua in that season. Ultimately, Brian Flores refused that. Brian Flores got fired after that. They bring in Mike McDaniel. The rest is history. But it seems like he's built up some really goodwill in that locker room, in that facility, with what he's been able to do for players and their families. Is it kind of a PR campaign to kind of smooth over his image after the way that things ended with Brian Flores? Maybe, but people do good things for bad reasons all the time. So, hey, props to Stephen Ross for just doing the good things. A lot of people don't do those good things. 3 owners received an F. And another surprising one, Art Rooney II of the Steelers received an F, which is wild to me. I just thought that the Steelers were one of those upstanding organizations where always perpetually one of the best owners in all of football, but Art Rooney II gets an F as the Steelers owner. Michael Bidwell of the Cardinals, not really a surprise there. And the one owner to receive an F- was the owner of the back-to-back Super Bowl champions, Clark Hunt. that was surprising to me. Clark Hunt of the Chiefs got the worst owner rating in the entire league, and the players hate this man. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The players absolutely despise Clark Hunt. The low rating for Art Rooney, like I said, kind of surprising given his family's reputation, Jesus Christ. But the back-to-back Super Bowl champions have the worst rated owner in the league, and that is astonishing to me. Absolutely astonishing. He was ranked dead last in willingness to invest in facilities. Rumor on the streets are he promised a renovation for the locker room and the facilities as a whole after they won the Super Bowl in 2023. Never followed through with it. They got like a couple chairs or something in the locker room, and that was pretty much it. I think he blamed it on, well, you guys played too late in the season, so we didn't have time to renovate the locker room. So if patterns hold, that same excuse will be used this year when he, once again, with one of the highest valuations as an NFL owner in the entire league, decides not to renovate again. Maybe this public pressure will tip him over the edge, though. That's the great thing about this NFLPA report card. Embarrassment is a strong motivator to spur on change. The Chiefs ranked 31st in team composite after winning 2 straight Super Bowls. I mean, the one thing that we can say from all this, these dudes hate Clark Hunt. I mean, loathe Clark Hunt. You don't give him that bad of ratings if you like that guy. So that's something that he's going to have to smooth over in his locker room, because it's a recipe for disaster. And, you know, coaches can use that to a certain extent. I'm sure Andy Reid has used that, over and over again. It's kind of an us versus them dynamic. Like, hey, we're just going to go out here. We're playing for the guys next to us, and we're not playing to that fuck upstairs, Clark Hunt. We're playing for Travis Kelce. We're playing for Willie Gay. We're playing for Joe Thuney on the offensive line, man. We're playing for each other out here. And, you know, I'm sure Andy Reid has used that at some point. Simply have to be better after winning back-to-back Super Bowl championships, having the best quarterback of all time, as far as I'm concerned, on your team. You just simply have to be better from an ownership perspective if you are Clark Hunt. 3 head coaches received an A+ rating from their players. KOC with the Vikings, Dan Campbell with the Detroit Lions, and Andy Reid. And some delusional fans still want Kevin O'Connell gone. Yeah, some people, you can't fix stupid, man. That's the short answer for it all. You just can't fix stupid. The Vikings hired the right guy. What is there to say? Good thing is, the Wilfs are a solid ownership group. I think we have a solid GM in place with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who is tied at the hip with Kevin O'Connell. So yeah, we're not gonna be listening to the dipshit fans that want Kevin O'Connell out of town in Minnesota for whatever reason. Still don't know. I guess 13-4 in his first year, and you know, falling short after having to play 4 or 5 different quarterbacks wasn't good enough for you. Sorry about it. Josh McDaniels, though, received the lowest grading of any head coach with a D. And looking around the room, no one is shocked. Interestingly, the Raiders were 9th overall in composite rating. Even with the lowest graded head coach, they would have been top 5 in if they just had a head coach grade that was like around the league average level for what teams rated their head coaches. Like, if he just was straight up middle of the pack, the Raiders would have had a top 5 rated organization according to their players, which is, I mean, a credit to Mark Davis. I think one of the underrated things, again, a lot like Stephen Ross, I'm not sure how good of an owner Mark Davis is. He hasn't really shown a great deal of patience, doesn't have a great picker, as the kids say, when it comes to bringing in GMs, head coaches, all that sort of stuff. But the players really like Mark Davis. I think Mark Davis is a guy that interacts with the players all the time, listens to the players, takes in their input. Honestly, I don't know if Josh McDaniels gets fired in the middle of the season if there wasn't effusive input from the players that this guy is just a bad guy, a total douchebag in the locker room, doesn't listen to us at all. I think Mark Davis is a guy that really has the best interests of his players in mind, which is, you know, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, he might not be the richest owner in the league, towards the bottom, in fact, but at the very least, he seems to have the best interest of his players in mind. Kind of a chip off the old block with Al Davis in that fact. No one cared for their players, I think, more than Al Davis when it was all said and done. And looks like Mark Davis is kind of fallen in his father's footsteps, which you love to see. And I believe this is the final bullet point, and it's a rather expansive bullet point, so bear with me here. Half of the league, let me repeat that, half of the league, 16 of the 32 teams received a D+ or worse in treatment of families. 6 teams received an F or worse. That'd be the Chargers, the Bucks, the Bengals with an F-, the Steelers with an F-, and the Patriots with an F-. Wild, again, that those two teams are down there in the F- range, but spurring improvement with embarrassment. Hopefully that happens. And the Commies at F-, that one's not surprising at all. I think we can all kind of agree on that one. Just 9 of the 32 received a B- or better. Vikings were the only team to receive an A, if you were wondering. Just, the classiest organization in the entire league. Ho-hum, here we are. 12 teams don't have a family room for players' families. 7 teams don't provide daycare services on game days, and 4 have neither. The bottom 4 in the rankings have neither in the way of a family room or daycare service on game days. 11 teams charge players for their daycare services on game days, including the Chargers. I think most notably, I would say the Chargers and the Bucks. The Chargers charge $75 for the first child, and then $50 for each subsequent child, while the Bucks just straight up charge $90 a head for children, which is insanely expensive. That in the biggest league in all of professional American sports, anyways, you can't provide your players free childcare on game day. It's in the budget. I don't care whether you're the poorest owner in the league or the richest owner in the league. Free childcare is in the budget, and I mean, I understand. The $75 and $90, that's cheaper than many external daycare services, but the industry standard for a majority of the league, a vast majority of the league, is free daycare on game days, okay? Also, miss me with the quote-unquote millionaires complaining about billionaires trope. Rick Stroud trotted that one out, and he got excoriated on Twitter the other day. I took part in that one as well. That was just an asinine take. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. You just as much as you're entitled to be wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion. It just like I said, a wrong opinion. There is an enormous difference, though. Enormous difference between a couple $1 billion and a couple $1 million. I mean, so just to give you an idea here, let's do some math real quick. Let's just conservatively say the average rank and file NFL player is worth $8 million. And I say conservatively because I'd say probably most rank and file players are below that, probably less than that when you factor in the QB salaries, or take out the QB salaries rather. As of 2023, the average NFL owner is worth $6.928 billion, excluding Rob Walton because he is worth triple the value of the next owner, which is hilarious. That would make the average player's net worth 1/866th the size of the average owner. Let me repeat that again for effect here. The average player's net worth, if we're assuming an $8 million kind of conservative ballpark estimate for the average player's net worth, 1/866th the size of the average owner. Millionaires, not even in the same stratosphere of wealth as billionaires. And that's not even factoring in the players at the bottom of the roster who are bringing home less than $1 million a year after taxes in a lot of cases. Bottom line is this here, and I'll end off the episode on this. Free childcare on game day should be standard for NFL teams when it comes to the game day experience. If the Wilfs can do it, the owners of the Minnesota Vikings, if the Mark and Ziggy Wilf can do it with a bottom 5 net worth among owners, every team in the league can, and they should. And with that, that is my TED Talk for the day, that quick little 5-minute TED Talk for you. That's all for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. We do this thing once a week in the off-season. Coming out to you on Tuesdays every single week. Go ahead, if you like this episode, like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Help me grow this thing a little bit, boys and girls. We'll just keep it on moving from there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it is at Caleb Verzak. Link is down in the description. Still haven't changed that at. Still debating if I will. I've thought better of it that maybe I don't want it to just be Unqualified Analysis, but whatever. Follow me on Twitter at Caleb Verzak. Link will be down in the description. If you want to contact the show, you can either go through the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com, which is also in the description, or you could shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'll probably be a bit more responsive with the DMs on Twitter. With that, though, thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. As always, I've got no clue what I am talking about. However, one thing I learned this week, the 90-mile beach in New Zealand is only 55 miles long. And there you have it. Y'all have a good week. I will see y'all next Tuesday. Enjoy.